Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of There's Will, your favorite show that has me as a presenter. Maybe. Is there another one?
No.
No? Is this just this one?
Well, yes, there is another one with you as presenter.
Oh, yeah, it's called Poland Daily Travel. I
Indeed.
forgot. Yeah, I forgot.
So there is more than one.
I need a minder to tell me what I'm doing. I think people who watch the show may agree with that. At any rate, I have with me today in the studio Karolina Dehnhard.
Thank you.
From New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah, in the United States, but she's a local gal from Poznan originally. But you wouldn't know it because your American accent is better than mine.
And no Polish accent either when I speak Polish, so I'm good.
You are good.
No
You're
Polish.
very good. She's
Meaning no accent when I speak Polish that I wasn't, raised in Poland. I left
Right.
when I was 7.
She's a cunning linguist.
Indeed.
Yeah, and speaking of cunning linguists, we have Phil Goss with us.
Hello, thank you.
It's good to see you, Phil. Phil is one of my more interesting acquaintances. He has a lot of mysterious goings-on, which we can't talk about today. But it's part of the iceberg that is Phil, the part that stays below the ocean. And Phil sails, maybe like a duck, paddling,
Maybe like a swan.
Yeah, or a swan.
Swans are nasty.
Yeah, but
Yes,
they're clean.
like a swan.
Like a swan. Yes, a dirty swan, a dirty bird. At any rate, and we have Patrick Patterson from Kyiv. Today we're going to be talking, a constant theme will be adoption, because Patrick has been working on the adoption of a series of puppies and a mother from Izium. He's going to be telling us about that in just a second, live from Kyiv. And we see one of the. Is that one of the puppies, or a couple of them there?
These are 2 of their puppies, yes.
Oh.
Sweet. Yeah. And Karolina and Phil will be talking to us as well about the situation with orphans from the Ukraine, which is a serious situation. We touched on it before on the program, but we're going to be looking at that in the second half of the program in depth. And I think you'll find that's an interesting story. Now, we go back. They said never work with dogs or children.
Uh-oh.
And yet?
And I'm breaking both rules. Because we're working with Patrick and animals. So it's breaking both rules. Patrick.
I guess I'm the child, right?
Yes. You got that.
I did.
I didn't even send you a script, and you got that. That's great.
Look at these faces.
That's
I
great.
mean, adorable. Look at those
are sweet.
babies.
Now, can you tell us the story of these doglets? How you came across them, and
Yes, I
etc.
can. These dogs, they're from Izium. They are from an area in Izium that's close to a large residential neighborhood that's been pretty well known for. There's a piano on the top floor. It's one of the largest civilian single strike casualties that Russia has inflicted on Ukrainians, and these puppies and their mom come from that street, fairly close to this apartment complex. There's 5 puppies, 1 female, 4 big brothers. I'd say that the mom, her name is Misha. She is, I'd say, a year and a half, maybe 2. That'd be kind of pushing it, but I'd say a year and a half. Super well trained. She can shake. She's good off leash, good with cats. She's just a great dog. She obviously was someone's dog in Izium before.
Can you raise the puppies a little bit onto the picture so we can see them while you're talking? Thanks.
Oh.
Because we'll put out an appeal. These puppies are all from adoption. And Patrick, are you willing to come to Poland with some of them, for example?
I'm willing to come to Poland with all 5 puppies.
Okay, if we can find places for them to go. They're sweet, aren't they?
They're very
They are. They dance. They,
I bet.
Am I?
What? Oh, that's a lovely one too. What kind of dogs are they, Patrick? Can you tell us a little bit about their pedigree or lack thereof?
So, mom is definitely shepherd mix. A lot of shepherd in her. The puppies Izium. They're Izium pups. Maybe lab mix, so it could be like a shepherd lab mix. They 3 of them are black. 2 are solid black. 1 has the white chest here, and then the other one looks like a snickerdoodle, more kind of like the shepherd look. And puppies are maybe 7-8 weeks old, probably pushing 8 weeks now. They're amazing. They're sweet. All have really great kind dispositions. And did I mention that we will bring puppies to Poland?
You'll bring puppies to Poland.
Transportation.
This is the thing. Now, what does one have to do to get one of these? Just say yes?
Just say yes.
We need to find somebody who's living in the country who needs a good guard dog, you know? Be a good idea, wouldn't it?
All you have to do is say yes.
Okay.
Vaccinations and the passport, we will work to have those taken care of here. And to bring here, this is
Are they chipped?
Mom.
Patrick, are the dogs chipped, or will they be chipped?
They are not chipped right now.
But when you get a passport, don't they have to be chipped?
They will be chipped, correct. This is Mom. Hi, Misha.
That's Mom?
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. She's very calm. She's a natural on TV, isn't she?
I mean, look, I can take her off a leash and feel really comfortable with it. Off leash right now. There's dogs in the neighborhood. There's cats. I've, been with her a short period of time, but she's a great dog.
That's a nice shot there. And where are you right now?
In Kyiv, just in the neighborhood.
What, near your place?
Yeah,
In the center?
Yeah. Kind of out the back.
Patrick, are these dogs that families left behind when they fled?
I can't say for sure about Mom. Misha. My assumption is Misha could be a dog that was abandoned because of where she came from. I mean, the majority of the people on this street in this apartment complex flat ended up in the mass graves in Izium. So
They ended up in mass graves.
So she's an orphan. The
Just to
mom's an
clarify
orphan.
that.
Mom's
What?
an orphan.
Yeah, Mom's most likely an orphan.
Mom is definitely an orphan. She
Yeah.
Snickers.
How do you
She
know
was-
her name is Misha?
There were a gas station attendant that was close by, was helping feed Misha and also Misha's mom, and with some of these puppies. So they had called her Misha, and they just knew her name was Misha, and she shakes, she sits, she was obviously someone's dog for sure.
Mm-hmm. And Patrick? What's life like over there? Just to switch the subject a little bit, we'll come back to the dogs anytime you like. But what's day-to-day life like in Kyiv right now? I wonder.
Well, today was the first, I think the first day in the last 51 days that there was somewhat of another mass missile strike. So the air alarm sounded at 4:30 this morning. A couple of hours from here, there was a missile that killed at least 14 people in a residential flat. Right outside of Kyiv, there was air defense that knocked down a rocket. But it went from air raid sirens going off constantly during the winter, and when they went off during the wintertime, you could assure that something was gonna be heard, whether it was drones being intercepted or missiles from air defense. And now it's air sirens don't sound that often in the city. So when they do go off, you kind of feel yourself a little bit more on edge. It's a beautiful day. The cherry blossoms are out. Everything is in full bloom, tulips. People are riding their bikes, exercising. It's kind of that feeling of, if you weren't in the East or you don't know what's going on in the East, it's hard to tell that there's a war going on.
What are you hearing? What kind of news is on the street from the front or from your contacts? Because I'm hearing the story seems to be changing since mid-March, and one of the things, of course, is that the Russians are possibly closing in on that last piece of western Bakhmut where the Ukrainians are. And also, the Ukrainians saying they're running out of ammunition. What's just the word on the street there?
You know, I still think everybody seems optimistic about what's going on, and there's a lot of conversation about Ukraine is about to start making that big springtime offensive push. Even though Bakhmut is almost surrounded by Russian soldiers, there's still a lot of optimism that Ukraine will take it. It's just a matter of time. I think they feel like if Russia was going to be able to do it, they would have already been able to make that happen. But needless to say, I think it is known that Ukraine is having some munition shortages. Also to say that there's more Russian soldiers on the ground now than there were at the start of the war. But also too, there's also more Ukrainian soldiers on the ground than when the war first started as well.
Have you been reading these reports about? I just read one of the running out of ammunition.
Yes.
Russians.
No, the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition.
That means they must be shooting a lot.
But the Russians too.
They
They're
don't
running
have
out
enough.
of. They're running out of people. They're running out of guns. They're running out of ammunition. They're running out.
I think this is why I'm asking him what he's hearing on the street, because the story seems very confused in the last 6 weeks to me.
Mm-hmm.
From the middle of March, the narrative has changed. Narrative or the story. I prefer to call it story because narrative has become another cliche, hasn't it? But and one of those things is that you hear, for example, in the words of Robert Kennedy Jr., who declared for the presidency.
That's right.
And then his little bit about Ukraine was, and we hear that I shouldn't copy his voice because that sounds mean, but that is how he sounds. He talked sense about a number of things, but on the subject of the war, he and Tucker Carlson seem to both be of the opinion that it's all Russia. Russia's going to win. Ukrainians are being slaughtered, and Kennedy said 7-1, which exactly flips what everybody's been saying for the last
most recently,
year, that the Russians have been losing 7-1, 7 men to 1.
Well, it's interesting.
You're talking about the kill-to-kill ratio?
Yes.
It's interesting what he just
yes.
said, though, about the fact that if they would have done it, they would have done it by now. And that's something that's echoing, that they went in strong, it was going to be over within 72 hours, a week. Here we are a year plus later, and it doesn't seem like they're going to lose.
I think a significant factor is this, that the motivation for Ukrainian troops is significantly greater than the motivation for Russian conscripts.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. They're fighting to save their land, their sovereignty. Russians are being told, go fight. What are they really being told?
Right, go die.
Yeah.
But that's what I don't understand is how people can be watching the same news and reading the same news that we are. It's freely available online. Lots of different news. The only ones, there's only a few retrograde Russian supporters Western Russian supporters who were speaking out saying, oh, it's Ukraine is going to lose. From the first month, from the first week, they've been saying that, these people. Tucker Carlson was one of them.
These prognosticators,
wrong about
I
it.
suspect...
Of course, he knows nothing about the problem with Tucker Carlson, and I'll say it to his face if I ever meet him, is, in a nice way, but is, why don't you read some history, and why don't you care a little bit about the empire's responsibilities abroad?
Yes.
Because when you're Rome, you have not just responsibilities in Rome.
That's right.
And I don't understand the attitude. It seems to me antediluvian because it erases the whole evolution of America.
I suspect that in this case, there is a certain amount of influence over his content which external actors exercise.
I was just hearing that.
Well,
I thought
no
that
more.
too. I thought that too, but it's not true. We want to talk about him a little bit now because he's the biggest
headline story right now, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest headline story in the United States, and that affects the war story, the propaganda, both sides, because he was very popular in Russia. Here's a guy who was the most popular guy on Fox. I know that Rupert Murdoch could not have been happy, but apparently Tucker Carlson was working from a studio at home, either in Maine or in Florida.
Huh.
I just heard this morning.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and he was not even going in, and he was just writing his thing and not submitting it. No editors saw it. He was just saying what he wanted to say. And I guess they got tired of it.
Hence the monologue.
Especially this pro-Russia, or apparently pro-Russia stuff. I don't think he's pro-Russia. I just think he's ignorant of abroad, and he always has been.
Listen, this goes so far. If we look at the history of Poland-Ukraine relations, right? I mean, and Russia, this goes back hundreds of years. Someone to comment on what's going on now
You've got to know the background.
It's not responsible, right? You need to do a little bit of the history to understand the impetus behind this.
I think especially in the case of Poland and the Polish experience from the 1920s with the Soviet Union and the Polish miracle on the Vistula.
Yes.
Europe fails to understand the debt they owe.
Well, the miracle on the Vistula is the 1920-21 war,
right.
when the Russians were stopped by Piłsudski's forces in front of Warsaw.
And Europe underappreciates the Herculean effort Poland made with the assistance of, I believe, American airmen, World War I vets.
You better believe it. Marion C. Cooper was the leader.
And I think that experience in Poland lent it better than others to understand what is at risk in Ukraine were it to fall to Russia.
That's right. If the country's taken over as a whole, not only will geography and the maps be rewritten, but look at how far back in history we're going to go and how we function as Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and this is a great point that you're both making here, that and we've said it before constantly on this show, and one of the purposes of this show when we talk about the war, we don't always, but when we do, and when we are talking about the present situation in Central Europe, is to let people know this is not a new story for anyone who knows the history here. It's not a new story for any of the Slavic peoples or the Scandinavian people or even the Turkish, or the Balkan people, because it involves them too.
And the Brits in the Crimean War, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to know that. I mean, I feel like Tucker Carlson should read at least James Michener's book called Poland. I mean, it's not the best, but it's pretty good giving you characterizations. It's not a bad book, maybe his best of all these ones he did.
I think everyone should take a little bit of a time out to read about history and what this really means. When the war broke out, my family in Poland...
Or you could read Adam Samoyski's book.
Exactly, right? So my 80-year-old aunt said, well, here we go again, right? So the reaction was, we've been through this before.
Oh, that's a good anecdotal story. Absolutely.
Yeah.
She said, because she'd seen it before.
She lived it.
She's seen it before.
So, we are experiencing...
She heard about it from her parents.
Exactly. So we are living this very differently from our perspective as Polish Americans or Polish people living here.
And listen, it's not about Poland. It's not about Russia. It's about all of us, because this is where two wars started.
And of course, if we look at
Central Europe,
the Holodomor in Ukraine in the 30s, where the Soviet machine starved how many million? 20, 30? It was huge.
It's a war act, So...
Soviet and Russian genocide and aggression,
of calculated
whether
cruelty
against Poles or Ukrainians or Armenians or whomever, Tatars in Crimea, their ideas of ethnic cleansing, their ideas of Lebensraum, as it were, are nothing new, proven, well-known, and those who refuse to admit it or understand it deserve our derision and scorn.
Well, I find it very interesting
I agree with that.
that
Derision at least.
that people
Scorn may be too far.
in the United States that don't understand the history, right? That maybe our history lessons in our grammar schools and high schools don't go that deep, right? Or who knows how far they go these days. But they're not looking at this as anything that's a historical event that occurred, as you said, in the past. They're looking at this as Putin's bad, he invaded, what's going on? This is all about current politics in 2023. It's really not. It's really not. There's a new impetus right now, but this goes far, far deeper, especially with how long Putin has been in power.
Your aunt was right. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember just a local, someone in Warsaw was asking me, it's older people, they were asking me, it was approaching 80 sort of years old, like this lady probably, and was saying, do you think there's going to be, and like I know, there's going, like anyone knew, because we were talking to people who should know, and they weren't sure either.
We knew.
Yeah. Well, we had an idea. But anyway, I said, he said, do you think the Russians are going to invade? I said, well, it doesn't make any sense, but probably yes. Because it doesn't make any sense.
We, in the larger we, at least, Americans had people, boots on the ground in Poland in early February of 2022.
Yeah.
In Rzeszów?
In Rzeszów.
In Rzeszów, yeah.
And were preparing for what they knew to come. A good friend of mine was a stewardess for LOT Airlines. Her last flight was, because she was quitting and moving on to another job, her last flight was from Kyiv to Warsaw. It was the last flight out of Kyiv.
Wow, that's a good story. We're going to end the segment now. I just want to thank Patrick Patterson for talking to us about those dogs. We'll put some information. If you want to adopt a dog, I think they're, God, I'd like to have one.
So cute.
Wouldn't you like to have one?
Yes.
And he will bring them ready to go with papers and everything to Warsaw. So if you want a dog, just write in to on YouTube to the show or on Facebook and let us know. And a dog will arf its way into your life. So that's all we have for the first half. Stay with us and watch these scintillating messages that were carefully selected by elves and the North Pole for you to buy things. See you after the break. We're back, and in the second half of the show, I want to, thanks to Patrick Patterson again from Kyiv, with the dogs.
With the dogs.
If we only had...
I wish we had them as props.
Yeah, I know.
I should hold one of those puppies.
Yeah, I should bring my cats in and hold them. I think I could be like a Bond villain.
Like Doctor, indeed.
Yeah, I could be Dr. Hook. No, that's the wrong thing. He was head of rock and roll band.
True.
Didn't he? Dr. Hook? In the medicine show?
Yes.
I'm sure all the kids out there know that one.
That's a scary cartoon.
People just looked at their TV and went, what?
I have a Dr. Hook cassette.
Hey, I know who
Now you're
Bime is.
aging yourself.
I know who Bime is,
Right.
okay? I know who Bime is. I know Cora. I know Republica. I know a lot of the bands. And the Blenders. So you should know Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show, right? That's not too outlandish. I'm talking to those are Polish bands, I just mentioned, for people who are watching this who are not Polish. So at any rate, we had a more, adopting the dogs is a serious thing because of the backstory. The story behind that is that Izium suffered just horrible damage at the beginning of the war. In the immediate week or two of the war when the Russians were trying to take Kyiv. They didn't do it, obviously. But on their way, they indiscriminately destroyed and both people and property, and no doubt animals. And these animals lived, this mother of this dog lived through that, obviously. And these puppies were produced recently. So
Babies.
Yeah, they're free. They're free.
Baby puppies.
They're still free. They're not under Russian domination, and that's something. But we have the story of human beings who also have been separated from family by either circumstance or death, in some cases. And the story of adoption and the difficulty. I mean, you can adopt those dogs pretty easy if you want, just get in touch. But if you want to adopt children, it's a much more difficult process, and it takes a lot of time and money and energy to do it. It's worth doing it, of course, to those who want to. And of course, for the children, it's far better than anything they can look forward to, and orphanage. Karolina Dehnhard, who is a family law attorney in the United States, we met at the World for Ukraine conference with Phil Goss.
That's right.
In December, just before Christmas. And one of the things that we talked about was the problem of these orphans. This is something you're focused on as a family law attorney. And I wonder if you could give us the basic story of how you got involved, what the problem and problems are. And Phil, you could jump in. Phil used to be a consular officer and dealt with these things. So you're both the right people.
Yes, I was.
Shut up and please tell me everything.
I was adoptions officer also in that, so I do understand from the consular side.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
I call him my fixer. But listen, it's a very serious topic. Obviously, we spoke about this briefly when we were in Rzeszów at World for Ukraine, and it's a tragedy. Before the war broke out, Ukraine unfortunately had one of the worst social service systems that existed in the world, we're going to say, certainly in Eastern Europe. Children that were in orphanages, that were stripped of the parents were stripped of all parental rights, true orphans ripe for adoption, were not getting adopted. The living conditions were deplorable in most of these orphanages. Kids got, basic food, barely any education. They turn 18, the doors were opened. Here you go, the world's ahead of you. Well, what world? So now fast forward to the war. The war breaks out. Orphanages have to be evacuated. Bombs are up in the air. These kids have to leave. They were transported by buses with their caregivers to Poland and further on, Germany, Spain, England, and so on. Well, it's a year later. So while President Zelensky instituted a moratorium on the adoptions, rightfully so, invoking martial law in the event these children are going to be abducted, sex trafficked, whatever it may be, I understand, but 13, 14 months later, these children are living in orphanages in Poland and across Western Europe. And what are we doing? These kids need loving homes. And even if the war was to end tomorrow, even if it was to end tomorrow or today, where are they going back to? Not only are their structures destroyed, but the infrastructure isn't there. So upon the war breaking out, I'm a matrimonial attorney in the New York area.
You're a marriage attorney.
I'm a matrimonial attorney. I encourage marriage. Don't get divorced, but if you should, I'm your girl.
You're the one.
But this is a different conversation. This is a conversation about people that have been waiting to adopt for a very long time. Families that either couldn't have children or life just passed you by, okay? And they called and they said, Karolina, what's happening here? We're watching television. These kids need homes. So I flew to Poland to try to gauge the situation. And what we learned was that, yes, these children need homes, but you're not getting them. No adoptions, moratorium. So fast forward, a year later, we now have identified 200 families, 300 children that were already in the process of being adopted. Children matched with American families, vetted process. A lot of them were 2 seconds away, and this is where you step in, on the consular level to actually get the paperwork to go to the United States. Those children fell into the moratorium realm. What we're trying to focus on right now is to at least get those kids out since they were already leaving. So we're not taking the children, which we've been accused of.
You've got kids, you've got two groups. You've got the kids who are ready to go, and there was a moratorium that was stopped.
Yes.
And then you've got kids who need to go further in the process, who were in Ukraine, but they're here.
And let's look at the numbers.
And other countries, too.
Children bound for the U.S. We know of 200 families in the U.S. that were adopting 300 children.
That's correct.
And total number of orphans in Poland, we're not really sure, but it's somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000.
That's correct. Documented 5,000 to 8,000. But as we did our travels throughout Poland and visited many, many orphanages, we met personally about 1,000 children. The caregivers say, oh, there's another one over there, there's another house over there that may not be documented. And the horrible thing about this, Will, right now, and Phil and I have discussed this, is that the original NGOs that came in, guns blazing, let us help, food, medical supply, Band-Aids, sanitary products, they had to pull out. They can't sustain to give infinitum. So the children now are getting basic needs met. But how long can that happen? Why are we not focusing on the bigger solution, which is having these kids adopted?
Because they're in temporary solutions right now, but that temporary solution has become now a year plus.
That's right.
And remember, the 5,000 to 8,000 are those that came from orphanages.
Yes.
That traveled over in mass. About an hour outside of Warsaw, we have one location with 750 orphans that represent 39 different orphanages in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And you've got the directors and so forth, the staff. You're looking at about a 1 to 15 ratio of staff to child. And so if the staff works 12 on, 12 off, you're looking at one staff per 30 children for 24 hours.
It's really mind-boggling, and especially, and we've spoken to many psychologists on this issue as well, these children are literally sleeping, getting 3 meals, and maybe playing ball. What about education? These kids are missing years of education. Not that they were getting the greatest education while in Ukraine, but at least something from their teachers. Here, the kids are in Poland. They have a language barrier. They don't have access to the mediums to learn. We brought 750 laptops, by the way, to Poland last time we were here. But the kids are literally...
Who donated that?
When we came here on a mission with retired Senator Lesniak and some other attorneys and some civic leaders, we brought with us 750 iPads equipped with Duolingo so they could learn in their Ukrainian language to promote education. But I'm going to use that word, which is, they're existing, they're vegetating. These children are vegetating.
And you say they get 3 meals a day. Remember, these are underfunded, so their meals aren't necessarily complete nutrition.
Right.
No, but listen, you're right that the real nourishment they need is to have love and a family environment. Some, or even will do.
Because that will provide for
the
their
warmth
need,
of a family.
their
That's right.
more basic needs as well at a more appropriate level per child.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible. It's going to be hard for these kids. The war and everything is bad enough, and then they're in a different country, and what the heck's going to happen to me next?
It's the unknown for sure. A lot of these children have the abandonment syndrome that you have in orphanages, right? That they're even afraid to touch your hand when you come in because who are you? You're going to stay for 5 minutes. You're going to give me a hug, and then you're gone. And here's another person that just left me. So many psychological issues. But I think the biggest issue is that we've identified is also the lack of medical care. These kids, some of them came from Ukraine without so much as having ever gone to a dentist, an ear test, an eye test. So we've organized with doctors from the U.S. and Germany and Poland to provide that first level of response, of care. The Polish government right now is providing medical insurance for these children, but we've gone as far as identifying more invasive procedures they need. We're helping a little boy, Max, to actually have an operation so he can walk. So we are starting with identifying the basic needs, providing humanitarian aid and medical aid, but the focus for me and Phil and our group is really to discuss the bigger problem solving here, which is the adoptions.
And remember, we've been talking right now about children who are in the Ukrainian adoption system.
Right.
We also have a category of orphan, the war orphan, whose mom and or dad was killed somehow.
2 categories.
Yeah.
And these
at
kids are
least.
in no system, they're in no organization, and they are out floating.
And interesting to that, Will, is that, in order to be eligible for adoption, you need to have a court decree saying that you truly have no next of kin, right? That the parental rights were terminated. You have that decree that's going to be translated, the consulate gets it, immigration and so on. These kids that Phil's referring to, or you're referring to, they have a process ahead of them. Yeah. They're going to be searching for the next of kin. How long will that take? How many years of their lives will these children lose? We've dubbed them the forgotten generation, and we really want to help for that not to happen.
And our biggest challenge is our own administrative problems. There is a need, an emergency need, and yet we seem somehow unable to overcome our own administrative barriers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what is recipe for success then?
Well, I'll tell you, this is what we're doing.
You must have an evil plan.
This is, we have a good plan. So Congressman Panetta, along with hopefully Senator Booker in New Jersey, are going to unite and work on something called the Humanitarian Parole Act, which is something that was in place when we had the issue with the orphans from Haiti in the United States. And they found a loophole to bring the children over without doing formal adoptions, but providing safe havens. And what we're looking to do is to bring the kids over to the U.S. under the Safe Haven Parole Act to at least get them onto American soil. For some reason, and I think you and I talked about this, the word adoption and getting the kids over is so taboo, where it shouldn't be, because adoptions for Americans were legal before the war. Right now, it's almost a dirty word.
Adoptions from Ukraine were
Yes,
legal.
by Americans.
There were, as Phil said, or you said, 200 families adopting 300 children.
Correct.
before
the war.
the war. And that
Still in
paperwork,
process.
And just to reiterate,
Yeah.
that paperwork stopped. So even what was a fait accompli was
Correct.
not a fait accompli. It stopped because of the war. Otherwise, it would have gone through.
Correct.
And nothing's happening. So even for those who are in the process of transformation or
Adoption.
yeah.
Well, see, here's a
Changing, yeah,
potential,
yeah,
a
yeah.
potential
they
problem.
didn't get it done.
A
Correct.
potential problem with the moratorium is that it took back rights that the government had already given to these children in their cases, saying, okay, this child is good for adoption. Oh, but wait, no.
Yeah.
Now, when you put a moratorium and says, well, no more, okay, fine. But for those to whom that privilege, right, status had already been granted, to take that back from them was disingenuous, I believe.
Absolutely, and there is really no reason. If you think about it, there's an
Disingenuous, yeah.
there's an overcrowding issue. You know, Poland has been wonderful in general, right, taking in millions of refugees and these orphans and so on. But how much can Poland sustain? How much can Spain and Germany? So if there are families that went through the probably several-year process, psychological vetting, financial vetting, right? They even test the animals, the whole thing. Stamp of approval given. Why are those children not immediately being transferred over to the U.S. to these families so they could have a normal life? Lessen the burden on the country that's caring, provide them a loving home.
What about, there are actually three categories of children. There are those who were in the process that got stopped. There are those who haven't yet got in the process. We could say they're in limbo.
Right.
But in adoption.
They're
But
sort of
eligible for
in
adoption.
between-
But in a-
they're in
they're-
between states. They're eligible. And then you have the third category, even more disturbing, the children who've disappeared.
Well,
That's maybe a fourth category.
Yeah, because they have the children that lost their parents during the war that now face a very long time of becoming eligible
category.
for
Yeah,
the
I know
system.
what you're saying.
But the children that have disappeared is a conversation all of its own. The New York Times a few weeks ago, ran, I think it was a front page story on one of the inserts, if not the front page, about Putin coming in and literally just taking the children.
Right, that's the other category.
There was
That's the
something.
fifth category.
There was something on the news the other day when I was in Poznan where the Russians came into an orphanage still in Ukraine that's operational and open. They had guns. The guns were shot up. They said, you, and you. If they didn't want to go, they said, we'll shoot you. They're literally taking kids. So kids are being taken under the
I
auspice
guess Tucker
of...
Carlson thinks that's okay.
Right, under the auspice of we'll give you a better life, but God knows what they're doing with them. But here, the families that they vetted and they approved, those families are not getting any attention or PR. So that's what's interesting to me with regard to our own coverage in the United States.
The thing that's happening to these children is these children are being bullied by bureaucracy.
But there's yet another category.
Yeah.
And that in the early days, so we're talking late February through mid-March of 2022, you had hundreds of young girls, now we're talking teenagers and young women, disappear into human trafficking. You had many bad faith actors going from wherever in Europe to the border saying, well, come on, get in my car, and then they're gone.
Yeah, we saw
We
that.
know hundreds.
We saw that with Arthur, who's our friend.
Yeah.
Arthur was there on the border. We saw some people, had him kicked out of a place, said, these guys are not right.
Yeah.
Who are these guys?
They were-
Standing around, looking, wearing sunglasses, looking around at the kids.
Yeah, and just waiting to pack
Yeah.
up the cars and,
Yeah.
make the money.
Yeah,
So
it was very...
So the
Bad feeling,
moratorium initially invoking martial law, as I think I said earlier, it made sense at the beginning of the war. But at this juncture, while the war continues, there has to be a focus on these children again, and the moratorium can't be in place for God knows how long.
Okay, so what are your steps? What are you doing? The moratorium shouldn't stay in place. You've got a Haitian model that works.
Yes.
What are you putting forward, and who's on your team? Who do you have in the Congress, for example, or in the administration?
So we have Congressman Panetta that is representing this parole act, if you will, on the congressional side.
Leon Panetta? No. A different one.
California. What is his first name? See, now I'm going to
That's not the
forget.
guy who was in the administrations before.
No.
Because I think he's retired. Leon Panetta
Yeah,
was
so this is
CIA and other
So this is not that individual, but yes, a Congressman Panetta.
a congressman,
And we are now looking,
commonwealth.
and hopefully it will be Senator Booker, if not another senator, to do the senatorial aspect of this and present this to the administration to essentially say, yes, let's present this now to Ukraine.
Booker's from New Jersey, isn't he?
Correct,
Yeah.
yes. And so I'm an attorney in New Jersey,
Yeah.
and we have 2 families out of those 200 that are from New Jersey. So this is how we were able to get some traction, in that I'm focusing on this, and there are 2 New Jersey families. By the way, all of them are up in arms. It's not like they could call these kids and say, hey, how are you doing? The only way that the one family was able to keep track of their 2 daughters that they're looking to adopt was by the iPhone, Track My iPhone, the pin drop. So now imagine the angst for this family. If they didn't buy the iPhones for these kids, they would have lost track of them during the war. And these were already vetted families.
You need to get all these families together, even if it's remotely, and put them all,
That's right.
on Skype or Zoom, and have a meeting and have it on television on one of the shows, maybe on Fox or whatever show will do it, whatever the big stations, and have them talk about this all together and make a noise.
But now, here's an interesting situation we've got right now in Italy. We have 39 children in Italy that were taken administratively by the Italian government. An Italian senator, if I understand correctly, with his friend in Naples, who was a judge, said basically, okay, Ukrainian Adoption Authority is no longer welcome, would not allow them access to documentation or allow them to copy court public documents, stealing these children administratively. And we've been working with the Catholic Church and our very good friend, Father Mahawa in Przemyśl. We've got
Southeast Poland.
Yes, downstream, a place for them, one place for the caregivers for the 39 children. I think it's 6 caregivers with them. And we're ready to take them. But we've got to have invitations in place. This is just a day or 2 away. But I think somebody somewhere, I put Brussels onto this as I could. I have a friend in Brussels who's a translator, but she knows whom to contact.
Translators know everybody.
Translators know everybody. Exactly.
And she's a Russian language and English language translator. She's Polish, and so and probably speaks English and French and German. I don't know what. Doesn't matter. Point is, somebody shook something, and the kids are going to fall out of the tree real quick and come to Poland. And whoever this senator was in Sicily and whoever this judge was in Naples learned that they couldn't go about doing things the way they had been accustomed to.
What were they doing exactly, just briefly?
They were giving Italian families these kids, essentially saying, we don't care about the moratorium, we don't care about anything.
Giving them to them.
Yeah, there was a court decree allegedly issued that said, you caregivers, thank you very much for taking care of these kids. You go back to Ukraine and do whatever you're going to do, and here's the new Italian family for these kids. And but for the fact that one of the American families that's looking to adopt kids that are there, we would have never known about this. But for those 200 families that are organized in the United States, this information would have never come to us. But we immediately got together.
If they need homes, why was this a bad thing? Because...
Well, we don't know who the Italian families were.
They didn't...
We don't know.
The films were not vetted properly.
Correct, or even identified, right.
The point is this. For the same reason they don't want the Russian government to take the children.
Right.
It has to be above board.
Yeah.
On all sides.
Yeah, everything has to be known. You can't just say, my friends need a...
Exactly. There's a process for international adoptions. Now, commentary on whether it's good, bad, or indifferent is another show.
Okay, we got 3 minutes.
But there is a process. I think that this is a good place. This is a good place to end. That you said we have a group of people organizing to address not only the immediate concerns and react to emergent issues, but we have a much bigger plan right now to deal with first the 300 children and then the bigger moratorium.
How many children are in all? It's several thousand, isn't
Yes.
it? We're talking about thousands of children.
In Poland alone, up to 8,000. What about in other countries?
That's
Romania has quite a few.
Yeah.
Moldova has quite a few.
Because people came out across those borders.
Exactly.
And that's why. Romania and Poland are big border crossing areas for people coming out of Ukraine. And Moldavia, of course, for the same reason. It's right on the border. And you just walk across in a lot of cases. They were walking across.
That's right. That's right.
Normally, borders where you can't walk across in many places.
But in the early days, a lot of people were leaving because of the larger fear of what will happen. Many people have gone back now, especially to Western Ukraine.
Yeah, but the problem with the children, again, is that, and a lot of cases, if they're from the East, that their homes have been destroyed or their communities
There's nowhere to go back to.
Yeah.
Right.
So they cannot go back where... What a mess. They can't go back. Every war causes this problem, but we're supposed to be better at dealing with these things today with all our experience from past wars and our much more developed social social net, to catch
Absolutely.
people when they
And
fall.
especially the kids that were already vetted and matched.
Yeah.
Matched, ready to go. There's
Yeah.
no reason in the world to prevent these children.
Among the kids
from
in
going.
the
It
system,
sounds like a no-brainer for a big story then to get this moving.
among the kids in the system, one of the problems we saw was that many orphanage cases were children who had fetal alcohol syndrome.
That's right.
And those kids have greater needs, let's say, than
Gosh, well, they were lucky to get out of
normal
the situation they were in.
Yeah.
If they had alcoholic mothers who were...
well, they were
Hence the
already in the
termination of
system.
parental rights. They were already identified as
A
orphans
lot of
in
them
the
were
system.
already taken out
Yeah.
from their families, so they wouldn't have been going back there anyway.
Correct.
Well, they're
Yeah.
they're going to go back to the orphanages, right, where they
but
where they
probably-
suffer and have medical
Are
needs.
they better in
and-
an orphanage there or outside? Maybe, outside. But the problem is cutting them off from their culture and people who speak their language and all those things.
I could tell you that the families that are looking to adopt the 200 families, a lot of them are so sensitive to this issue. Some of them are of Ukrainian descent. Some of them are truly Ukrainian. But they're committed to help the children learn about their culture. We're even proposing that they'll have dual citizenship and they'll come back. They will organize trips to come back
They
and
will
so
always
on.
have dual citizenship.
Yeah,
Unless and
so-
until they rescind their either passport,
Right.
they will be dual citizens.
So we're looking to
We're down to
continue.
30 seconds. What's the last thing we need to say?
Anybody that's listening should join this cause. Reach out
How
to
do
us.
they do it? How do they do it? Because we'll put a note on YouTube.
If you Google Karolina Dehnhard, as I like to say, I'm Googleable. You'll find me. My cell phone is first thing that you'll see when you Google me. Phil obviously is as Googleable as I am,
Yeah.
and we look forward to anybody really calling us and lending support, lending their voice, lending their opinion to how we can move this ahead.
Very good. That's it. That's all we have. I want to thank Karolina Dehnhard
Thank you.
for being here. I want to thank Philip Goss for being here on the show. And that's the end of our adoption show. We've got dogs and children to adopt. Look, war happens, and when it does, the excrement hits the fan, as everyone knows. It's hell, isn't it, as Mr. Sherman said, General Sherman. Thank you for watching, and may I say, you're looking well. Why don't you stay that way?